energy that helped a lot of them through their illness.
In August '95, my lung collapsed and had to be rushed to hospital. And from that day onwards, my health's just gone down and down and down, really. And the part about my lung collapsing was it was about 6 weeks before my wedding. So I got out of hospital a week before the wedding, had my wedding, and then it collapsed again on the Tuesday. So my honeymoon was also back in the hospital. That's how I came to meet Diana.
I was 4'6" before I went forward for the operation. I'd been having growth hormone injections for several years beforehand, and I'd always known that with these injections I'd get to 5 foot. So when the doctors finally told me that I wouldn't get to that height, that I was not going to grow anymore as my bones had fused, I was absolutely devastated.
I broke my neck, spinal cord around C2, C3 area, they're not quite sure. So this leaves me paralysed from the neck down. But the doctors did say that I'd never be able to breathe unaided by myself. And I've done that, so you never know.
I think Diana really had this gift. She never thought she was special. She never thought she was important. She thought she was just there to help people and to be with people. And I don't know.
My consultant said to me, Diana would like to come and visit you for a second time. So I said, oh, okay. And when she arrived, she walked past my room because I'd moved. And she came back, sat down, said, well, can I have a cuddle?
Yes, you can have a cuddle.
So she sat on the bed, she gave me a cuddle.
It's you that's done it.
She said, oh, I'm shaking. I said, well, it's the cameras, it's not you. And then when she sat down, she sat on the nurse's lead.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
Push the red one.
That's just me. No, it's not me. Sorry.
It was lovely. It wasn't an act, it was a genuine feeling of what she felt. And you didn't feel unease with her. You didn't sort of make you think, oh, it's royalty. It was just so natural. But she was lovely.
The first thing I remember her saying to me is, I was a bit worried about what I was supposed to be doing, so I asked, should I curtsy to you? And she says, oh no, I should be the one curtsying to you. You're all so brave. So that put me at ease straight away. She said to me, keep in touch, let me know how you're getting on. And as any 10-year-old would, I took her at her word and off went my first letter, just about a year later, seeing if she remembered me and telling her how I was getting on and how I was doing at school and everything. And to my surprise, she wrote back almost immediately and saying that she remembered me and just asking lots of questions, and I was absolutely amazed. I never thought that she would write back. And it just went from there. We wrote to each other right up until her death.
Well, Princess Diana was in Liverpool opening the new women's hospital, and she was visiting the Anglican Cathedral, and she'd read about me, and she knew me through the charity, through Simon Barnes, and she got in touch and asked could she meet with me and the family. I was just shocked and amazed, but I didn't know what I felt. Just couldn't believe it. She made me feel, even though I can't use my arms or my legs, like I could do anything. There was nothing I couldn't do. And it was just an incredible feeling. Just gave me the biggest buzz of my entire life, I think.
She rang me on a mobile from the south of France on the Wednesday evening prior to her death. And people said, is she in love with Dodi Fayed? Is she going to marry Dodi Fayed? I mean, the papers and everybody. Well, I have no idea. But I do know I have never heard such fun and life and happiness in her voice. And I'm thrilled in a way that the last time I ever heard that voice, it was as full of happiness as I can ever remember.
She was just like this ever-present presence, as it were. And it wasn't until she died that I realized that that had been the case. It was suddenly like the top of the Christmas tree had been cut off, that she was the most glamorous woman that there could be, and she just disappeared. It was like the whole world was a little darker.
Shortly after her death, just about every session I had with a woman patient, it came up, and they were distressed. Most of my female patients were distressed, and almost all of them mentioned it in the session as something that they were aware of and felt incredibly sad about.
I had this absurd sense that I was connected to her in some way. When she was married, I was probably 15, 16 years old, something like that. And it was sort of prime time for fantasizing oneself as a princess.
People suddenly felt this terrible loss, that they'd lost the one person that they saw every single day of their lives in some way or other, whether it was on the television, it was in the New York Post, it was in the LA Times or the Washington Post, it was, you know, just hanging out, or there'd be, you know, one cover or other. The People magazine had her on so many times. And I think that they just felt this terrible emptiness.
Yeah, I don't know. She was like she was all the marvelous, glamorous things that one wanted to be.
With normal grieving, we have a ritual, and we have a support system, and we have things that we do, and there's a timetable that seems to go with it. We don't have a timetable for these kinds of people yet, and we don't know how it's going to end. So you give things, you buy things, you send things, and so we have a sort of a thrashing around. We're trying to show how do you express grief for somebody you've never met, but you still feel a loss.
There are as many ways of mourning our lost princess as there are mourners to grieve. What is shoddy and incongruous to one is appropriate and tasteful to another. And as we struggle to find our way through this unexpected grief, there is, it seems to me, no right way to behave.
It isn't that she lived and grew old and we could see her possibly not looking just like she used to look. It's like JFK. We will never get over JFK because the chapter can never be closed.
I think that the manner of her death and the fact that she was so young and it was all so unnecessary shook people. I think that in itself contributed to the sense of loss people had.
There's a certain kind of tragedy that occurs to anybody who dies before we'd expect them to.
I like to think that she was here for a reason, and not just one reason, for many, many reasons. And I think she has made it. Her life has made a difference.
Her impact is not bricks and mortar. I mean, her impact is not the wing of the hospital that's named after her and whose funds were raised in her name. I mean, her impact really is in the hearts of the doctors and nurses and patients who were in the hospital.
She was constantly striving to become better and bigger and more involved and to really challenge herself.
I think that the effect that Diana had is in the idea that someone could be this famous, the most famous, recognizable woman in the world, the woman whose picture appeared in every magazine, every newspaper, everyone knew her. And yet, in that role, she could seek to be idealistic and work hard for the betterment of humankind.
She tried to give hope to people. People who had no reason to have any kind of hope, no future, no nothing. Then she would come with her beauty, with her grace, with her smile, with her caring, and she would give that to them.
She provided a role that I think that many people need to have, need to know that someone can do this and stand and represent these ideas.
She was really at the top of her game, it seemed to a lot of us, and there was no telling what she would do, how she would influence the world, and how she would use her extraordinary presence on behalf of causes and people she cared about, and whether she would now finally have some private happiness at some point in the future.
Thank you for coming to our country.
You know, I would say that she found the best possible way to live, which is to be there for other people. She'd found that.
By the end of her life, she had made it okay for people to say that they weren't okay, you know?
In Diana, what you saw is one young woman who made a dent, who stood out, who had very, very little support. And yet, she had the courage to take it on, and she did get a response. She did cause some degree of change. And in that message, there's an empowerment for all of us very ordinary people, that sometimes wonder if we can make a difference or not. And that is a very powerful message, and that's something that she does leave us.
I think Diana was one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. And I think the legacy that she's left behind her of care and consideration for those who have no voice and cannot deal with their own problems is a wonderful example of how one might attempt, and I fear fail, but nevertheless attempt to conduct one's own life. But let us make sure that what she stood for is carried on, and then her life will not have been totally in vain.